Maybe God has tried to teach us a lesson in one form or another, but for some reason, it just doesn't take. Perhaps it goes over our heads. And he has to kind of bring us back around again to try to reinforce that lesson. Our spiritual dullness and immaturity will keep us from making progress in our walk with God. A sad reality, to be sure, but oh so true. And this is not a yogiism. But there's a reason why we may not grow the way we should. There's a reason why we do not progress. There is a reason why sometimes the message doesn't get through. And it's not just because we're Sicilian, Josh, right? It's not mere stubbornness or pure thick-headedness. Sometimes, spiritually, we're just not in tune. And I want to talk about that. Because Jesus has to take his disciples down this road again. Because he really wants them to grasp a very important lesson. And I'm glad he does. You know why? Because we need to learn too. So let's take a look. For one thing, been there, done that. Recognize that expression? And this is when he's confronted with this crowd, that's exactly what you could say. Now here's one thing I would say in reply to that. Okay? For one thing, the Lord's compassion remains the same. One time prior, he was confronted with a large crowd in need, and he healed them. Well, he's confronted with the same need. Well, how is he going to end? Well, listen, not only is Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forever, as it says in Hebrews 13:8, but he shows remarkable consistency when dealing with people. The same compassion that moved him when he ministered to the previous multitude, the 5,000, caused him to show concern for this gathering as well. He cares about the well-being of these people. This is just the way Jesus is. And he will respond consistently because this is in keeping with his character. Jesus shows love to all, and he loves all people with a deep, steadfast love. This love shows itself when met with the various needs that people have, whether they are spiritual needs or whether meeting the needs of the soul and of the body. Jesus knows our weakness. He looks at these people and he says, you know, they've been with me 3 days, and you know, I care about their condition. Even with regard to their physical needs, he shows practical, down-to-earth concern. Jesus can best minister to people because he understands them, weaknesses and all. In this, he displays the heart of a true shepherd. Once again, we see another thing. We see the crowd willing to go to extremes to get to Jesus. In this case, they stuck with him 3 days. Have you ever, can you identify with us? I ask you. Can you identify with the desire to prolong a treasured experience, wishing that it wouldn't end? I feel like that Christmas time. I love Christmas season, I love the bright lights and everything like that. And I love the time that it gives for us as a family to gather together and to reflect on what it means to celebrate Jesus Christ. It's one of those times when family and faith intersect into something so beautiful. We reflect on the coming of Jesus and why he not only came, but why he still dwells among us. That's why I love Christmas time. And that's why I just want December 25th to just last as long as possible. Well, I guess for the crowd it might have been the same thing. For them, going back, apart from Christ, also meant a return to the harsh realities of everyday life. I could understand what they want. They said, you know what, I just want to stay here with Jesus. He's healing their sick. He's ministering to them. He's teaching them. They feel loved, comforted, and fed. Can you not identify with them saying, you know what, I want to live here for a little. But you know, there comes a time when we've got to return to our daily realities. Now, one of the things that I think is revealing is our good friends, the disciples. Sometimes we just don't get the message the first time, do we? Okay? The disciples asked Jesus a question. What are we going to do with this crowd? Jesus says, I want to feed these people. And they're like, what are we going to do with them? We don't have enough food. And it's like, didn't you learn anything from the last go-round? But yet, they asked the very same question. For some reason, the lesson of the feeding of the 5,000 seems to have passed them by. It just went over their heads. I mean, if they had thought of that, then perhaps they would have said something like, well, Lord, will you feed this crowd the same way you fed the other 5,000? Or do you have another plan? No. If anything, it's almost as if they have no knowledge of what the Lord would propose to do. They ask this question as if the last incident never even happened. Parents, you know this, don't you? You understand this, don't you? More on this later. Instead of recalling the greatness of the Lord's ability, the disciples look instead at the meagerness of their own resources and the barrenness of their environment. You know, what did they say? We're in a desert place. We're in a remote place. You know, they just want to send everybody away. We've got no food, and we're out here, and there's no Stop and Shop. There is no ShopRite. Okay? They focus more attention on external matters and outward circumstances, which undermines their faith and their ability to consider the miraculous possibilities. Listen, faith looks beyond these limitations and sees the reality of abundance in God's power and in His provision. But you know something? I think there might be something else at work here too. Now come on, let's be honest. These guys are human beings after all. And they have their frailties and their faults. And you know what? So do I. You do too. We often make excuses to absolve ourselves of responsibility. I wonder if one of the reasons why the disciples are like, you know what we don't have enough food is because they just don't want to deal with it. Maybe you don't identify with this. Have you ever, come on now you need to fess up. Confession is good for the soul. Fess up. Have you ever played stupid just because you didn't want to do something? Thank you, Maya. God bless you. No, we often will do that. I don't know how, and we're twirling our hair. I don't know how to change a tire. What am I going to do? Or, I don't know how to do this. Or, I don't know how to cook. Or, I don't know how to do this. Or, I don't know. Sometimes we just play clueless because we just don't want to deal with it. True or false? Ah, too true. I think this reveals an unwillingness on the part of the disciples to deal with the problem. Maybe they were tired, they didn't want to bear the responsibility of feeding the crowd. At such times when confronted with needs, we may conveniently plead a lack of what it takes to meet the need, expecting that just by admitting that, it will absolve us of responsibility. Okay. How soon we forget the things God has done for us. How often have you prayed during a time of panic, during a crisis, even though the Lord has answered you before? You know He always comes through, but you come to Him stressed. You come to Him, you come to Him anxious and worried and fretting.